Wow. That is the word to describe this Monday morning. This Monday morning full of breaking news involving the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am Mike Asti, and this is another edition of Mic Drop here, made possible by the Believe Network and available everywhere you get your podcasts, and of course also on SiriusXM via Believe. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are believing in themselves these days as they are making win now moves. So while many of us have argued they should just embrace a full rebuild and finally rebuild this thing that's been average at best and really doesn't have a chance to go ahead and win a championship, they were never going to do that, and we all knew that. And since then have been making win now moves, and this team is better than it was last year with this current roster. And a big part of that is the breaking news and the most recent move where the Steelers ship off Minkah Fitzpatrick back to Miami, where they got him from years ago, and bring in perennial Pro Bowler Jalen Ramsey. And this, I believe, from what I saw, was the first time that two secondary players, five-time plus Pro Bowlers, get traded for each other in about 20 years. Smith, the tight end, a solid addition to the offense as well, almost 900 yards and 90 catches there. He certainly could help an offense that needs help. And Geno Smith, he's involved in the trade and with a pick swap in there too. So for me, I like the move. I know a lot of Steelers fans are very attached to Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he was a fan favorite. He was very popular. He hit the ground running with a great season or so right away when he joined the squad, even though they weren't really good as a team at that point, and he was really overcompensating for what was going on offensively. And ever since then, they've been, a playoff team, but kind of meandering around, not really having a chance. The offense not nearly being good enough to go ahead and make a run, even though the defense has generally been top 10, maybe sometimes outside. Some certainly have argued that, and, reasonably so, the defense hasn't been good enough, but way better than the offense. And now the defense gets better. Minkah's been declining, and the offense gets more help to it. So again, Mike Asti here on Mic Drop and offering you a live reaction. Was not planning a show, by the way, to start this Monday morning, but offering you a live reaction now to the Steelers trading Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey and what this now means for the Steelers. So feel free to chat along. Any questions, any comments here? Maybe you don't like this move because you love Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I know from what I've already seen with the reaction, there are some fans that do feel that way. And this also corroborates the rumors that have been going on for months that Minkah could be on the trade block. And, where I want to start with this is I get, the emotions maybe. It's a fan favorite player, and Minkah certainly was good. He certainly wasn't really the problem with the team, but this makes the team better overall. And while Ramsey's a declining player and an older player too, and maybe you could argue it's an even swap there, adding Geno Smith to it certainly helps the offense. You give another pass-catching tight end with Pat Freiermuth, so this certainly helps the offense that needs help and now has an upgraded quarterback. Even, Aaron Rodgers only going to be there for 1 year, but still an upgraded quarterback for the one season. And Pickens gone, but DK Metcalf in. So you're getting another pass catcher, which is necessary, and not exactly anywhere near a replacement for Pickens, but I'm sure DK is still going to get a lot of double coverage, but they weren't going to pay two wide receivers, and this gives another dimension to Arthur Smith's offense, and he definitely needed that. And then defensively, maybe it's an even swap out. Maybe it's even there. Jalen Ramsey, though, has shown a lot in recent years still. He's certainly shown flashes and even kind of broke this news in a pretty cool way. I think he's going to be a fan favorite, too. So I kind of want to get there that while I get fans upset about losing Minkah because he was a fan favorite, he has been declining. We have to be honest about that. He has been declining. His last big explosion year was 2021, maybe we could argue, maybe a little bit after that. It's not been close to the same production since then. We're sitting here in 2025 ahead of the 2025 season. He's been a Steeler a while, even though maybe it seems just like yesterday when they got him and made him kind of their de facto first-round pick years ago. And then he was getting pick after pick in that crazy Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph type of season with Ben still around. And now Mason back and Minkah gone. But Minkah, a great talent, and had his moments for sure, was able to turn around games and wreck games early in his tenure. That guy has not been that guy in years. So why not try it again in a similar type of move with Jalen Ramsey now? Why not see if he still has gas in the tank? Unlike Minkah, Jalen Ramsey has won a championship. He's been involved in a deep run. He also even got close years prior with the Jaguars. He's been a leader of a team. He's been a captain of a defense with Miami. He is that force that he's not going to be there for 5+ years. This isn't a forever move. It's not exactly a 1-year thing, just like Aaron Rodgers, where Rodgers is probably going to retire, but it's not for the future. It's for to win now. So the Steelers that smoke screen's out there. They're sending the signals. They couldn't be screaming it anymore. They want to win right now and not just get in the postseason and lose right away in a wild card game, but actually make a run. Doing this, where you add to the defense and the offense, you're at least even defensively, if not improving, and you also help the offense in the same trade while you're getting a lot of value for Minkah, who was declining. It's a win for Pittsburgh. Once again, mic drop here, powered by Believe and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on SiriusXM. So I'm going to go through social media because I've also certainly had reaction to me on social media. There are some that are still upset about Rodgers. That here I'm still mad because they wanted this to be Justin Herbert, which is the gift that was sent to me there. So that just was never going to happen. They wanted some blockbuster trade somehow to get Justin Herbert. Obviously, that's not going to go down. And Dan McCune talking about adding more to the deal. So and how this is not just a 1-for-1 player. So Jonu, that's a fair assessment. That's not the story here. I did come back at him in that regard. That's not the story. That's not why I wanted the reaction to Minkah Ramsey. That's the headline. That's the story in the national or local media, that we're discussing. But that is part of this. But because that does help the offense. This is not player for player. That does help the offense. That is fair to bring up. And when I went in there, obviously, but you can't just cancel out the other parts. It's Minkah and 5th for Smith, Ramsey and a 7th. That's the overall trade. Sure. I mean, again, that's the overall trade. That's just not, again, the story here. That's not the headline here. That's not why this was done. This was done because Minkah Fitzpatrick's declining, and it then allowed the Steelers to continue to be in win now mode and get better, even while shipping out Minkah. Trey Edwards here, no. Well, Trey, yes, it has occurred. It's fine. It's the same. That is from Crispin Havener, who actually is the assistant press secretary with the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So, Crispin, I may have some comments there about what's going on road-wise on the Turnpike and the continuous construction that's been going on for years on end. So, maybe we'll have you on the show to talk about that because I have a lot on my mind. I'm sure as the listeners and all of you do as well, but a Steeler fan, and it's fine. It's the same. I got to say again, I don't think so. I'm going to push back on that. I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's fine. I do think this Steelers team is better today than they were yesterday. They are better now than they were when you were waking up this morning, when you're having your coffee and Cheerios. That team wasn't as good as this team now that we are discussing a trade that sends out Minkah Fitzpatrick, brings in Jalen Ramsey. You have the pick swaps, and then you also get Jonu Smith, who, again, is part of this deal, and it's a declining Minkah for a veteran in Jalen Ramsey, who also absolutely is declining and is not what he was years ago. You're not getting the same player that, say, the Rams got when they won a championship with him, and he kind of was that hired gun for them. but you're keeping the defense rolling. You're getting a motivated player. You're getting a hungry player to keep on and trying to win again after a bump and not doing much winning with Miami. You're getting a player that's pretty damn excited about it. If you go to his X account and see the mixtape he created with old Steeler highlights, going back to the Steel Curtain to more modern, and including him and working out. He kind of broke the news, or at least he says. I think it's a minute. You could argue whether Schefter got him or not, but kind of pretty cool that he was even close. So that's a big deal. It's definitely cool to have Jalen Ramsey as a Steeler, because I do think he's going to be a productive player. I do think he's going to fit in. We'll see whether he's playing a legit corner, whether he's doing a safety type of thing. Minkah obviously was that safety hybrid that was all over the field, again, early in his tenure, but that didn't work as much in recent years. So in 2024 with the Dolphins, Jalen Ramsey had 60 tackles, 39 solo. This is lower production than Minkah, by the way, but 2 interceptions, and was still very, very much involved in the defense when there and when healthy. He's had really, really big years, though. And again, this is not exactly even type of scenario, because you're talking about a corner versus a safety, unless Jalen Ramsey ends up playing more of a safety with Minkah gone, because you are trading a safety and bringing in a corner, and this now really depletes the safety room, even though it does help you corner-wise, and secondary is the same, but we'll see how they work the positions. But Jalen Ramsey, 60 tackles, had 88 in his last year with the Rams, and that is as a corner. I mean, Minkah's biggest year, I believe, was 120-something, but again, that's a safety. It's more opportunities for tackles. He had 90-some in recent years. So Minkah still was productive in that regard, but not nearly as much of a game breaker, has been declining, and even his tackles are way down from where they were years ago. But Ramsey, his best season, 88 tackles with the Rams in 2022, 4 interceptions that season, and he's also had a propensity of getting those into the end zone, whether he's scoring them or the offense is then taking it to the house afterwards when he flips the field. So Jalen Ramsey, much more recent than even Minkah in terms of having a big game-changing, game-wrecker, breakout type of season his last year with the Rams. He did spend 4 years with the Rams after moving from Jacksonville, where he opened his career and had that run where they did go the AFC Championship game and losing to New England. So he's had multiple deep runs and won a championship with Matthew Stafford and company, and even going to 77 tackles the year before in 2021 with the Rams. I'm sorry, that also 4 picks. So they 8 interceptions in 2 years. Obviously, that's a lot for anybody, certainly even a corner. So 77 tackles, 4 picks that year, 88 and 4 the next season. And both of them, he was able to flip the field and get a lot of points on the board. After the move from Jacksonville to LA, he became even better than he was with Jacksonville in Los Angeles, and very, very productive with Miami still, even though they weren't as much of a contender. And then going to Minkah here, and again, we're all taking this in together because this is somewhat surprising. I mean, we've all known that Minkah has, been declining and been on the block. It appeared maybe they weren't going to be able to make this happen. There were even comments from Tyreek Hill with Miami. I'd love to, hear from them on how he feels about this, because he was talking about working out with Jalen Ramsey and being motivated to be back there and no longer upset because, the thought was that he wanted out after last season, and he kind of had some comments in that regard. But where is he now? Because he's not going to be working out with Jalen Ramsey, or if he is, Jalen Ramsey going to be working out to play on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Minkah Fitzpatrick, 62 solo tackles last year, a forced fumble and an interception. He had a total of 96. And again, safety for corner, more tackles, but more opportunities for them. This is not even, you can't really go stat versus stat for the players. But the year earlier, a lot of injuries for Minkah and only 64. So he actually had less tackles than Ramsey, despite playing a different position and more of a tackling position. That 124 came in 2021. That was the big year where he also had a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and 2 picks. And Minkah's had that 5 interception season, the 4 interception season, 6 in 2022. Again, it's not like he's been trash. He's been a great player. He's had his moments. That early Steelers tenure, he was putting up record numbers in terms of interceptions in that stretch of games. And he had his first 2 years with Miami. At the time, they drafted him as a first-round pick. Then they kind of gave up on him a couple years in. That was kind of odd and surprising. But now they get him back to kind of maybe try to put something together with him once again. Again, Mike Asti here. Mic Drop with Believe, available everywhere you get your podcasts. And I do mean everywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. And on SiriusXM. Like, subscribe, download. I will definitely promise some guests. This is a live reaction to the Steelers trading Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey. Had to do it. Had to react here, getting traction on social media. Of course, feel free if you have anything here in the YouTube chat, any questions, any comments. I won't linger here too long, but just wanted to give my thoughts because right now I like the move. That's merely thoughts. Right now I like the move. This team is better. And I will then promise guests to maybe even dive into this move in particular or what maybe is to come that I will tease and segue here before the end of this show. Because this feels like this isn't the end of the line for the Steelers in terms of making moves. This does not feel like the last move. Myself, other colleagues in Pittsburgh media, really everyone who's been tapped in for years has been trying to tell Steeler fans, I'll admit this, that you can't just play fantasy football. And this even goes not only just Kevin Colbert, but into even early Omar Khan, even though we saw some moves there. But you just can't play fantasy football. It's not as fun as being a fan of other franchises in a way in the offseason. They're not going to go crazy. And every time a player is available, they're not always going to become a Pittsburgh Steeler. And moves were made. It's not like they never did anything, but earth-shattering moves would not be made. And yeah, I brought up the end of the Colbert tenure there and trading up for Devin Bush, and obviously that didn't work out in the draft or even the Minkah trade at the time, which scrapped away a first-round pick and kind of made Minkah that first-round pick and Miami giving up on him only 2 years in. There were moves, obviously, and continuously retooling the wide receiver room over the years after drama and player departure. But it's not the same as being a fan of some other franchises that you can legitimately speculate and have fantasy football fun in the offseason. That's not the Steeler way. They not only do they ride it out with coaches forever, no matter what, even with Tomlin's underachieving and he's a Hall of Famer, but other franchises would have fired him years ago. They do not. They stay the course. They pride themselves on stability, and they never have this horrible season, even though maybe some fans coveted it and kind of wanted them to fully embrace the rebuild. And myself and colleagues have been preaching that, moves like this are not going to happen. You're not going to wake up on a Monday morning, have your coffee and spit it out because the Steelers are breaking news with an earth-shattering trade that's going to lead the national shows on that day. However, do we have a new Steelers way? Is this a dawning of a new day? Is this a new era for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And it is, no matter how it turns out and where it goes post Rodgers, because again, that's short term and only a 1 year thing. This is a dawning of a new day and a new era, at least mentality wise. And we've seen that. And yeah, they brought in DK Metcalf, and you could argue that maybe was the start of this for sure. I'm not saying this exact move is the open to the start of the new day or the dawning of the new day. But when you have individual moves and then you ship out George Pickens, it feels like you're basically trading Pickens for DK Metcalf. You don't want to pay both receivers. You bring in one that's more mature and more of a veteran who's not going to be a problem for you in a distraction. Pickens certainly was and certainly can be. Young, immature, also declined. You kind of swap those two players out, but you don't have both of them. It's not like your guns blazing with both of them. That would be a move that maybe with earth-shattering where you go from average and staying the course to all of a sudden you can explode and be a championship contender. You do bring in Rodgers. He's a 4-time MVP and a top 10 all-timer, but he's not who he was. He's a shell of his former self. He's still an upgrade from what you've had at quarterback, but it's not like you had to fight a lot of teams for him. He kind of fell into your lap once the Jets were done, and if he wanted to keep playing, and clearly he did. It wasn't really hard to do that. In recent years, when they switched out the quarterback room and gave up on Pickett and Trubisky and brought Mason even back, and you had last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, those were low-risk moves. They didn't have to pay most of Russell Wilson's money. Justin Fields was for a late-round draft pick. Obviously, those guys are no longer there, and we can argue on if, Fields, maybe they should have had him stick around and tried him out for another year, but those moves were very, very low risk. That's kind of the theme here. Most of the Steelers' moves in recent years, even after Kevin Colbert into Omar Khan, even if maybe Khan feels more aggressive, and he has been, they've still been very low-risk moves. Shaking up the quarterback room last year was low risk. The team was better than the year before quarterback-wise. They did upgrade it, certainly from what Pickett was doing, but it wasn't enough. They didn't go anywhere. They were one and done again, and they're no longer there. But, no sweat off their back, really. They didn't lose that much money. They had a similar, better season. The world didn't come to an end. It's not like they got invested in a guy for 4 or 5 years to shake up the room off of one bad draft pick that didn't work out. This, though, is a bit more than that. I mean, they're done with Minkah. He's certainly not going to retire, and this is earlier than maybe he would have liked to depart, even though he has been showing signs of decline. And they end up with the pick swap. Aside from that, they end up getting a tight end who also can help produce, in addition to getting Jalen Ramsey, who clearly also has something left in the tank. He has gas left in the tank, too, maybe more than Minkah, maybe the same as Minkah, but you get offensive production as well as the draft pick swap not really being a problem. So this feels like a win now, getting aggressive, willing to do something, and again, more than what Steeler fans maybe have been used to or have been told they should be used to. And now, to round it out here, if I don't have any other questions or comments, and I will go back to X and on social to see if anything else is out there or on YouTube, and more from this either in writing or on shows I'm sure to come on Mic Drop and everywhere else I am. I also do cover the national scene as one of the feature writers at Yardbarker, and of course, professionally cover the West Virginia Mountaineers. A lot of people are WVU and Steelers fans, so if you happen to be a WVU fan, WV Sports Now for all of the coverage there, and many of the other shows. Talk the full national scene with my friend and colleague George Gerbo on the Howitzer and Buzzsaw show for our monikers there, and that covers the full-on national scene. Our recent podcast focuses on the end of the NHL, NBA seasons, the offseason drama with both of those sports, and what maybe is going to happen and should happen over the next year or so. And let's see if anybody else has anything. But what I do want to tease here, and I've already seen some colleagues bring this up, I brought this up, and I think this is definitely the case, more is to come. So as I was saying, that we've always been telling you, don't think they're going to break news and it's going to be crazy. Even if they do change things up and make a move, it's usually a low-risk move or kind of a trade-off. You bring in one. They already knew they were going to ship out George Pickens when they brought in DK Metcalf, really. That was in their mind. So it's kind of a trade-off. You can do one by knowing you're giving up the other. It's not like you're going to pay both. So this, though, is a bit of a Steelers breaking news. Wow, you're spitting out your coffee, and this is really getting aggressive and a win-now mode. Do I think this team is winning a championship in 2025? Still, no. But another move is likely coming. So we really can't evaluate this team right now, to be fair. I do think they can win a playoff game for the first time in 9 years. I do think that Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers can both get off the playoff drought snide because it's been rough for them in postseasons for the last decade since they met in a Super Bowl, really. I do think they can win a playoff game. And if they win a playoff game, even though the Steeler fan base wants a championship, of course, if you win a playoff game, that's a major improvement over the last decade, basically. Certainly off of recent season post-Ben. And they now are very much in play to win a freaking wild card game, maybe win a playoff game, maybe somehow get the division if Lamar gets hurt or the Bengals start off slow again or something happens with Baltimore. Who knows? I'm not predicting them to win the division, win the North, but all of this is more in play now than ever before. This team is better defensively. This team is better offensively. This team is better all the way through. It really, really is. The consistency from DK Metcalf is better than the lack of consistency from George Pickens. You like to have both, but they never were going to. So I'd rather have DK than George Pickens. Not for 10 years, with George Pickens being so young, and maybe he'll produce with the Cowboys. Dak Prescott can score points. They're going to put points on the board, even though they usually disappoint in the postseason when healthy. But that doesn't mean that this coming season they're not better. I do think DK Metcalf's going to put up the same numbers he's been. He's a consistent force, and they're definitely upgraded at quarterback. Losing Najee Harris is a hit, but we all knew that was coming as well. So this team is better now. This is a win-now move. This is not a win in 5 years type of move that some were wanting, and I even wrote about and have been saying on shows they probably should have just embraced the rebuild, not paid TJ, and not worried about it. Bring back Justin Fields, see what you have. You don't win, oh well. Finally do the rebuild. They were never going to do it. I knew they weren't. They didn't. They aren't. And these moves are very much win now, and I will tell everybody, it's been out there, but I know they're going to pay TJ. The reports now are they're going to break the record when they pay TJ. I thought they were going to get close to that, if not do it. They're going to bring him back. Okay, so the conversation of you can't win a playoff game with him, why bring him back? Just fully embrace the rebuild. When you bring in Jalen Ramsey, when you trade off Minkah, when you bring in Aaron Rodgers, when you bring in DK Metcalf, when you're trading out draft picks and winning deals, for me, you're not going to do that. Months ago, I think they should have just embraced the rebuilding and not paid TJ Watt all the money, but instead they're doing this. I like the moves. The team is better next year, and they're going to pay TJ Watt. Okay, he's going to be a career Steeler, probably play his whole career in Pittsburgh, be a Hall of Famer, hasn't won a playoff game yet. We'll see if he can get one, but this now puts that more in play. I do think they're more on a path to win a playoff game and better than they were a season ago. I absolutely think that. I think winning a playoff game is in play. And if you want to call me an Aaron Rodgers believer, because I think they can win a playoff game with improved production from him, the end of the season last year with the Jets, he was better than what people think. His numbers were better than what people think. He certainly was way better than what the Steelers have had, even if he's not back to what he was when he was an MVP. Then go ahead and call me that. But this team is also now starting to get better around him, and I would expect another move. Is it going to be McLaurin with the Commanders, who clearly is unhappy there, even though he puts up tons of numbers? He's not the superstar, doesn't get his name in flashy lights or on tons of headlines or talked about on national shows, but he is a very steady force and very productive. Arguably that number one receiver before they even really gave him the tag, or people were talking about how they didn't have a number one receiver. You could argue it's been him for several years now. And obviously Jalen Daniels there, and they got in the playoffs, and they made a run to the NFC title game, and they had their greatest season in 30 years. They would like to keep him. They should be trying to keep on continuing on. They shouldn't be shipping players out for draft picks or whatever type of move they can get. They should be in win now mode, and they are. And they should seize the day in their division and in the NFC to try to get back, for sure. But if he's unhappy and somehow they can work a trade and the Steelers can do it, wouldn't be shocked maybe, because that wouldn't require paying tons of money right now. You do it, you worry about it later, and then you bring in more production. That I could see. I could 100% see that now. Tyreek Hill, do you go back to Miami again? He's going to be unhappy because of Ramsey being gone. He was unhappy last year. It's hard to believe he's actually okay and not unhappy still the last several months of the offseason. Miami's not going anywhere. No matter what some people maybe think they can catch lightning in a bottle, they're not. They haven't been, they're not. No matter what Tua does, they're not. It's not going to happen. The Bills will win the division again. The Patriots are finally getting better and maybe back to contender status. Who knows elsewhere? But Miami's not really going anywhere. So is that a move? What does that cost you? How much are the Steelers really willing to give things up to win for one season, to be in win now mode? It appears they're clearly going for it now and getting, moves that can help them for next season and doing more than, say, last season where they just shook up the quarterback room with low-risk moves. So, yeah, I think if you knew they weren't going to rebuild, and once you move on from that opinion, you got to like these moves. This team is better than a year ago. They definitely won this Minkah trade for me. Ramsey is going to give that production, if not more. They got also more for the offense. The picks don't really matter. They're both in the later rounds. I think the Steelers definitely won the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. I think Jalen Ramsey will be a productive and positive member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, also a veteran leader like Minkah kind of was. He'll fit right in with Cam Hayward and those guys. They will love him. I think DK Metcalf's going to be more consistent and less of a headache than George Pickens was if you're just talking receiver for receiver, because they weren't going to ever pay both of them. And yeah, there's questions on the ground still. There's still questions on this team, offensive line, defensive line. How much longer can Cam Hayward do it? He'll probably miss some games. TJ, of course, but I do think they're going to pay him. And then how many games can he play? What is his career the rest of the way like as he gets older? Aaron Rodgers only there for 1 year. Fair questions, but for 2025, they are better. And also likely with the draft in Pittsburgh next year in 2026 after the season ahead, they're going to likely be looking for that franchise quarterback then when Rodgers does retire, no matter how the season goes, and maybe trading up to get that QB. Never thought that really would be the case either, but we're in a new day. So maybe trading up to get that QB, maybe willing to trade multiple picks to get that guy, maybe getting in that top 5, top 10, even if they don't have that bad of a year. Maybe that's all in play and they get that guy and they get that next Ben and next franchise quarterback with the draft in Pittsburgh and the city and the bridges and the rivers as the backdrop. Maybe that's the case. That would certainly be very, very cool. But I do think, as I will round this out now, I do think another move is ahead. Now I think another move is ahead. Now I definitely think another move is ahead. I brought in McLaurin. I brought up Tyreek Hill. Are those the moves? What are the moves? Gabe Davis is out there as not nearly as flashy, but another possible addition. Maybe it's somebody that's not as flashy as this. They're not going to have you, spit out your coffee when breaking news hits the national wire, but another move is ahead. So want to leave you basically saying that I like the move. I really, really like the move. I'm talking myself into liking it even more. So I really like the move. The Pittsburgh Steelers bring in Jalen Ramsey, a veteran, hungry corner who is a productive player to say the least still, and a very accomplished resume-wise throughout the last decade. They do trade popular Minkah Fitzpatrick, but he's been declining, so that's not too surprising. And I think they win the trade and get more for him. Geno Smith comes aboard. I want to get Geno Smith's numbers out there actually before I fully end this show, because Jonnu Smith, by the way, we're probably going to have trouble pronouncing his name in Pittsburgh. I almost can guarantee that. But 88 catches, 884 yards, 8 touchdowns, and an average of 10 per. This is another tight end. And by the way, trying to add a controversy, he's been more productive than Pat Freiermuth even. Pat Freiermuth is that top receiver. He's the pass-catching tight end they got out of Penn State in the draft years ago. I like him. He's a great guy. He's somebody that could keep exploding, and people thought maybe would explode last year in the Arthur Smith offense. He had a similar year than what he's been. He's obviously very involved in what they're going to do in the future. He's locked up. He's going to be there. There were some rumors about trading him, but it doesn't appear that's happening. Kind of from what I know, he's very much a part of Pittsburgh, the Steelers, and even the city. He replaced George Pickens at the event that Pickens, skipped out on because now he's a member of the Cowboys. So Smith is a veteran from Tennessee, from New England, from Atlanta, last year with Miami. He's had solid years, very similar to Pat Freiermuth, the 400 to 500 yards receiving, going back to Tennessee and even Atlanta. Didn't do much with New England. Those were really, really down years, but the offense there was also very, very down. He couldn't even get 300 yards receiving in those seasons. But last year popped. Again, played the full season, 88 catches, 111 targets, 884 yards, an average of 10 per, and 8 touchdowns. Did fumble a couple times, but got his hands on the football a lot more. Pat Freiermuth is still that number one tight end pass-catching target, you have to imagine. But Smith adds an ability to do 2 tight end sets. He has the ability to not have double coverage all on DK Metcalf. If you do have tight ends out there, Arthur Smith offense loves the 2 tight end sets. He also needs a running game. He needs running backs, and who will merge with Najee Harris gone. But Smith is a big, big, big part of this. He's not fully a throw-in. Like, he makes you like this deal, even if you think Ramsey and Minkah are going to be the same guys for next season and beyond, because he's been that productive at least last year. Why won't that keep up? It could. And maybe he'll even become that top tight end target. His production, again, has been higher than Pat Freiermuth. So I like this deal a lot. I really, really do. The more I look at it, the more I think about it, the more I talk about it here on my reaction show, the more I see reaction all over the place. I like this deal. I like this deal a lot. So I'm in. I like the move to trade Minkah Fitzpatrick, to get Jonnu Smith, to get Jalen Ramsey, and see what he has left in the tank. And I get this win now move. If you're not going to embrace a full rebuild, and they're not, even though I called for it months ago, I'll put that on myself. I did call for it. They weren't going to do it, but since then they got really, really better. They're more in play to win a playoff game now than ever before. Another move is likely ahead. This is maybe the dawning of a new day and a new era for the Steelers, where they get that mentality of getting aggressive more so than ever before. And I do think Jalen Ramsey is going to be a major impact player for this coming season.